In the White House briefing room Tuesday, the Trump administration announced its latest steps to tighten its grip on the message it sends out and the news coverage it receives. This latest maneuver is seen as a continuation of Trump's ongoing battle with the press, seeking to reshape the way the media interacts with the presidency. One of the most notable changes is the White House Correspondents Association, losing its authority to determine how media outlets share coverage of President Trump during major events where space is limited. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt declared that the White House would now make those decisions. Leavitt argued that this move was about ensuring fairness in media coverage and returning power to the people. She assured that long-standing press pool members would still have access, but new outlets, particularly those that have historically been excluded, would also be granted entry. Legacy outlets who have participated in the press pool for decades will still be allowed to join. Fear not, Leavitt said. We will also be offering the privilege to well-deserving outlets who have never been allowed to share in this awesome responsibility, restricting traditional media. Welcoming right-wing outlets, the decision follows a series of escalating tensions between the Trump administration and mainstream media. The Associated Press, AP, a staple in the White House press pool, has already been barred from covering major events due to its refusal to change its terminology regarding the Gulf of Mexico, instead referring to it as the Gulf of America. In line with Trump's executive order, the administration has also been accused of granting unprecedented access to far-right media figures, including journalists from Gateway Pundit, Steve Bannon's podcast, and Lindell TV. While ideological journalists have attended White House briefings in the past, Leavitt's approach has significantly amplified their presence and influence. A veteran White House reporter, speaking anonymously, criticized the move. It's surreal to watch these so-called new media people asking softball, ludicrous questions to Trump and Leavitt, they said. I never thought I'd see plants in press briefings of the highest seat of American power. Legal battles over press freedom. The AP has since filed a lawsuit against the administration, arguing that barring their participation violates the First Amendment's free speech protections and the Fifth Amendment's procedural rights. A federal judge, Trevor McFadden, has acknowledged potential constitutional concerns, but declined to issue an emergency ruling, forcing the White House to lift the ban. McFadden did, however, question why the White House Correspondents Association had previously held so much authority over media access, a point that the Trump administration seems to have seized upon in its justification for the policy change. Leavitt's announcement was made with significant fanfare, flanked by television screens displaying a map of the southeastern U.S., stamped with "Victory" in capital letters. She emphasized the administration's stance. The map prominently featured the Gulf of Mexico, labeled as the Gulf of America. The Trump administration's broader strategy to control the media. This new policy is part of a broader effort to consolidate control over media narratives. The administration has also launched investigations into major broadcast networks, including ABC, CBS, NBC, NPR, and PBS, while notably excluding Rupert Murdoch's Fox. A frequent ally of the president, Trump himself has taken an aggressive stance against mainstream media outlets, filing lawsuits against companies such as ABC and Facebook, with some cases resulting in multi-million-dollar settlements. Paramount, which owns CBS, is currently evaluating whether to settle Trump's $20 billion lawsuit over an interview with Kamala Harris. Meanwhile, the Defense Department, under Secretary Pete Hegseth, has expelled 8 major news organizations from the Pentagon Press Corps, replacing them with 7 right-wing media outlets and 1 liberal publication, HuffPost. This shift has drawn further criticism from reporters who see it as an attempt to sideline critical coverage. Echoes of foreign media crackdowns. Some journalists and political observers have compared these actions to media control strategies employed in authoritarian regimes. Peter Baker, the chief White House correspondent for the New York Times, likened the situation to early Putin-era Russia, having served as a Moscow correspondent in the early days of Putin's reign. This reminds me of how the Kremlin took over its own press pool and made sure that only compliant journalists were given access, Baker tweeted. Fox News correspondent Jackie Heinrich also voiced concern, tweeting, "This move does not give the power back to the people. It gives power to the White House. Our job is to advocate for the most Trump's access takeover possible of Voice of America." The Trump administration's efforts to control media messaging extend beyond domestic news outlets. Recently, Kari Lake, a former news anchor and failed Arizona gubernatorial candidate, was appointed to lead Voice of America, VOA, a government-funded international news network. VOA has historically been tasked with delivering accurate news to audiences in countries where press freedom is restricted. However, critics worry that under Lake's leadership, the network will become a mouthpiece for Trump rather than an independent news source. Lake's appointment has drawn controversy, as it was presented as though it were a presidential decision, when in reality, the position is filled through an independent agency. Nevertheless, Lake has already begun asserting control, publicly promising to reshape VOA's coverage to highlight America's achievements worldwide. Additionally, Maura Namdar, a former Trump official, has been brought in to oversee US-funded international media. Namdar has previously accused VOA of parroting America's adversaries' propaganda and talking points. Under Trump's first administration, efforts were made to root out perceived bias within VOA. However, a federal investigation found that these actions violated constitutional protections and that Trump-appointed officials had abused their powers. The future of press freedom. Under Trump, these sweeping changes to media access and oversight indicate that the Trump administration is continuing its effort to reshape the relationship between the presidency and the press, with ongoing legal battles, mounting concerns from journalists, and the administration's increasing willingness to sideline critical media outlets. The future of press freedom in the US remains uncertain. Many journalists and media watchdogs see these moves as a dangerous precedent, warning that they could have long-term consequences for government transparency and accountability. As Trump consolidates power over the press, the coming months will likely see further battles between the administration and the media, both in the courts and in the public sphere. For now, the White House continues to assert its authority over press access, ensuring that coverage of President Trump aligns more closely with its preferred messaging, a move that will undoubtedly remain a contentious issue in American media and politics.